You're watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt Godwin. I'm so excited for our next guest. She's been here before. We love her. She has so much knowledge on the topic of social media marketing, what is trending in the social media marketing space. Gabriella Layne-Avery, she is the creative director and content strategist of Strut Communications. It's hard to forget that name. I love the name Strut Communications. Welcome back, Gabriella. Gabby, I'm going to call you.
Great to be back again.
Glad to see you. I was kind of hoping you would come back in studio today because we had so much fun when you were here.
I was planning to, and then something changed last minute, but I will definitely be back next month if you're open to having me. So just let me know.
Absolutely. You know, we always love having you, and there's always topics to talk about because it's an ever-changing landscape. It is something that businesses of any size, I believe, need social media marketing. They need to know what's up in this world. And so we always love having you. So yes, come back next month. And today I want to talk about a couple different things. And I want to start with this anecdote. And it's funny because I saw on your feed, you had a post that said something about, you know, that day when your day gets derailed because you have to find out what corn talk is or what corn kid is. So my day got derailed from reading your post because then I had to go and find out what Corn Kid was. And I completely, I cracked up at Corn Kid. And then also, you know, I just thought we need to talk about this because your point was like, I need to find out what's trending, number one. And number two, I need to then spend the time to figure out, is this relevant to my clients? Do we need to make a TikTok about corn? How do we then capitalize on this? Because there are some, you know, viral videos or viral memes that make a lot of sense for people to hop on, right? So then you got to put that through your brain. So talk to me about that whole process for you.
Yeah, so it's so interesting. I think I've told you this before. I spend a lot of time on TikTok and Twitter now because those are really the trend-setting platforms. So all of a sudden, I'm seeing everyone talking about corn, and they're arguing about this song with like this kid singing about corn. I'm like, what is going on? This always happens where you kind of start to see the insiders. You see it a couple of times by early adopters. You're like, okay, what's going on? So I like to research it. I like to look and see what is the context, what's the story. I like to see if this is something that is specific to social media or is it something that's getting like national news coverage, because that'll tell you how explosive it is. So those are usually my first two steps. And then I'll look at the context to see if it's something that's adaptable for my clients. So for Corn Kid, I think he ended up doing a partnership or something with Chipotle, which of course is predictable and makes a lot of sense. But then what ended up happening was people started using the song as kind of like a narrative to share things that they loved and they were obsessed with. So someone would share like a book that they loved, or like clothing that they liked, or like a meal they ate every day. And so it's like, okay, now is that something that makes sense for my client to tap into, or is this something that is just not in alignment with what they would care about? So it's definitely a whole process that can derail your entire day as a social media strategist.
Well, and you know, things like that are really, you have to get on it early. Like you said, be an early adopter. I remember when the Bernie meme came out with the mittens and he was sitting there and everyone created a GIF. And there was a website that you could go to and put him in your photo. And, you know, we did one, but I feel like we didn't do it fast enough because it was the next day. It needed to be that day to hit, right? Because you got to be one of the first few for people to see. Otherwise, maybe it doesn't quite work, right?
Yeah, because people are so like finicky, especially when it comes to trends. And if a trend really, really goes off and it's everywhere, people get tired of it very quickly, like within the first like 48 hours. So I don't know if you saw like the Little Miss trend.
I did.
That was so that was happening, I swear, for like 2 weeks on my timeline. I was like, okay, everyone is doing Little Miss. And of course, the first day, everyone's sharing all of them. But then by the second day, people are like, please, no more Little Miss. And they start complaining about it. So timeliness and the originality of it is so important for it to really be effective.
Speaking of that, my 16-year-old daughter thought that those were new ideas. And I said, no, I read Little Miss books when I was 4 or
Yeah.
5, they were my favorite little thing. The younger kids didn't even know that they were based on actual books called Little
Yeah,
Miss.
but like for your
I'm
information, these
like,
existed.
I was the original Little Miss Missy. So what I wanted to say also though that there's there's a trend that's like he's a 10 but he doesn't eat Chipotle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That those work really well. The memes that maybe those have a little bit more of a lifespan because it's not as in your face. And if you can come up with a very clever one that fits your brand and you can join that conversation, I find those to be funny even 2 weeks into it.
Yeah, so I feel like those are more like social media, like colloquialisms or
Yes.
terms. Those do have longer lifespans, like even the red flag, like I
Yes.
still see those, or I still see people reference those in captions. And I think, so I think that those, usually when they're like text based or meme, like Twitter based, when they're like kind of tweets, I feel like those do have longer lifespans and there's ways to kind of adapt them in fresh ways or use them kind of as insider jokes versus the ones that are very specific to like pop culture moments.
Yeah. But so I guess this is all to say that in this world of like we are saying, the landscape changes all the time. And you do really, we've talked about before, batching ahead of time and planning the calendar out a month in advance. But you also have to have your finger on the pulse of today because it is very timely. And so that's why someone like you comes in because you got to have the time to do that and the kind of wherewithal to say, so who's going to sit there and go, okay, does this make sense for my client? Do I have time to create a GIF for it? Do I have time to make a graphic? All of those decisions need to be made by probably an outside person.
Yes, exactly. Someone who literally eat, breathes, and sleeps social media for you, so you can just get all the cool brownie points and worry about it.
Yeah. And so this segues into a topic that you talked about on I think it was your feed, and it was the concept of human first content. I think you did a IG live about this.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that references, that term, human first content?
Yeah, so human first content is essentially really looking past the logos and the ambiguity that businesses traditionally have in normal or traditional marketing channels and really putting a face to your brand. There's so many different ways that you can do that now, whether you are a CEO who's willing to be public facing for your company, or you spotlight your employees, your customers, or you hire, UGC creators to create on your behalf, but it's really allowing the human connections to be made. The fact just remains right now that audiences love seeing human faces on social media. If you show human faces, your engagement is guaranteed to soar. And it's really tapping into that and making people feel a genuine connection and relatability to your brand by showcasing more human faces
So that's
in
an
your content.
interesting subject. Do you mean in photos or videos or both?
I think both, but
Okay.
honestly, of course, with video, that's gonna supersede everything at this
Right.
point in social media.
So, because I remember, and this was years ago, this is why I'm kind of want to talk about it, is that I remember there was a point when I worked for, let's say, some hotels and restaurants, and we didn't want to show, I remember a specific chain that did not want to ever show faces of other people, because we did capture UGC, which is something I want to talk about later, user generated content. And, so it would show a family on vacation and they said, hey, show it, backlit or show their sides, their profiles, or their backs, but don't show me their faces because then I know that's not me and I can't relate. But if it's just the shadow of a person or their backlit, then I can relate a little bit more. Is that still kind of the vibe?
It's interesting because I do have a client who currently has that concern, but for a little bit of a different reason. So for them, they're a nonprofit and they don't like to show faces, even if it's stock imagery, because they're like, okay, what if this person ends up on the news for doing something horrible and very unnecessary tomorrow?
Good
Now we're
point.
associated with them. So I think that there's definitely some risks that come with that human first approach. But I do think that things are changing, especially with video content, right? Like, obviously, you can create video content without there being human faces. But one of the things that makes video so engaging is seeing a human and being able to relate with them for any reason, maybe because they look like you, they sound like you, they do things that you you do. They're interested in things that you're interested in, especially if you're tapping into influencers
I
or
was just
people who
going to
already
say, influencers is a great example of when that works, because especially if it's on their feed, right? And they're engaging with their own audience, that influencers does make a lot of sense, which, God, that could be a whole nother segment, is talking about influencers.
Yeah.
But I do have more questions. Will you stick around for one more segment?
Yes, of course.
Okay, we are chatting with the very lovely and beautiful Gabriella Layne-Avery, Gabby to us, because, you know, we're close. She's the creative director and content strategist of Strut Communications. There you can find her at strutcommunications.com and at Strut to Success on social media on all channels. You can find us at America Trends TV on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we're going to be back. We're going to ask her about insights and UGC. Do you know what that term means?
Yeah.
User-generated content. You must know that if you are a business owner. We'll be right back right after this quick break. You're watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burke Godwin, and we are chatting with the very lovely, intelligent, smart, creative director and content strategist of Strut Communications, Gabriella Layne-Avery. Gabby to us, because she is now a friend of the show. Gabby, so before the break, we were talking about, we kind of mentioned the topic and the term UGC, which that was like all I lived in for a long time, was user-generated content and searching through Instagram to find other people that had posted photos of the hotels and the restaurants, and one of my clients was related to San Diego tourism, so I would just find any photos of San Diego, right? And then asking them for permission. And we had a proprietary platform to ask for legal rights to the photos. So because then you just repurpose them, and then it's showing all these other photos, and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on your own photo shoots. You just use generated content. So talk to me about where we're at in this world. Is this still something that people are doing for their businesses?
So I feel like you're gonna very much relate to me in this, like, a little bit of confusion, because a couple of months ago I started to see UGC everywhere, and I started to see a lot of people who would either post on Twitter that they were looking for UGC creators, or saying that they were UGC creators looking for clients. And I was like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. That's not how this works. And so now UGC has kind of evolved, where now there are creators who literally intentionally create content that's meant to look authentic and organic for brands, and the brands pay them for that content.
I dislike that greatly. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Like,
that's going against the grain, right? I get you. I get you on this, because then it's not authentic UGC. You're influencers and you're paying for it. Don't confuse the two.
Exactly. I'm like, why did you guys have to choose this term? We could have created a new term. But yes, essentially, UGC has evolved. I definitely still feel that the traditional sense of what we understand it to be is used to some extent, but now there is more of this like curated UGC that is really taking prominence in the industry, which I think is good, I guess, for brands who they don't have the capacity or the knowledge or the resources to create that type of content. It is like a new avenue to help them, but it definitely is confusing for people like us who, you know, we have a completely different understanding of what this term means.
I mean, it is time consuming, and you don't really, this was my experience back a few years ago, was I wasn't sure what I was going to find, right? Was I going to find good UGC, which is quality photography, looks good, the lighting's good, and it represents the location or whatever I'm trying to show. But when you find it, it's authentic and it's amazing, and then you share that and you have the experience of the person you've tagged, and then they are excited because you've tagged them and you've used their picture usually. You do have to worry about the getting legal rights and permission to use the photos though. So maybe that is why this trend has moved to like actually just hiring somebody and getting people that you know they're going to give you permission.
Yeah, and I think it's just also like for some of the things that you mentioned as well, being able to control like what you want seen, how you want it to be shot, so you kind of get to be a part of the creative process and dictate what you want versus like hoping that you find what you want. So
it's
I get
fake
the logic
UGC.
of it.
Fake, we're going to put the FUGC. I don't think that sounds right though. Am I going to get bleeped out, Jared? Oh my God, I didn't think that one through before I said it. Okay, I want to segue into another topic that I think is important for business owners to know, which is the insights. I know that different platforms, the main platforms, all have really good insights. On an Instagram account, if you have a business account, you have view insights under each post. And then you can go and look at, all the insights together. Facebook is really great. So talk to me about, what platforms have these and what business owners should be looking for. How often should they look at their insights?
Yeah, so every platform has, their own kind of metrics that they give you based on the type of content that's being created and what the metrics of success are on that platform. I would say that it's important. I recommend looking at it once a month, especially if you're the person who is like creating the content for the business, because when you start looking at it obsessively, it does become a little bit stressful, and then you start making very like quick actions trying to adapt to the insights from like one or a couple of posts, rather than being able to look at the whole picture at the end of the month and see trends and see commonalities between the content. So I always recommend looking at your content insights at least like once a month, and looking for really the metrics that are going to help you to understand how successful you are at reaching the goals that you have for your business. So a lot of the time people look at likes, and likes are great to just let you know if your content is successfully attracting people and getting their attention. But if you're trying to get someone to sign up for something or to go visit a website, likes aren't going to tell you that. So it's important to know what insights to look for to understand if your content is successfully getting people to take the actions that you want.
Yeah, I was going to say likes are kind of a vanity metric now that are not going to tell you. It's not necessarily equating to dollars spent, but what would be, in stories particularly have great metrics, because you can see who's clicked through, because you can leave a link now, or, you don't even have to have a certain amount of followers now. And then also I was going to ask you about, I would think that saving and sharing, how many times someone's actually saved your post or shared it to somebody else, because that indicates, I really like this. I'm going to save it to my collection for later, or I'm going to share it with a friend to say, let's go on this vacation together or something. So is that a metric that you look at for your clients?
Honestly, shares are like my number one favorite engagement metric, because not only is it great in terms of letting you know that this is a great piece of content, but it lets you know that it has like social value for people. If someone is sharing a piece of content, no one is going to share something that they don't feel is a good reflection of them, whether it's like, oh, I found this funny meme and now I'm sharing it with you, or I found this tip and it's funny. So it's really great in terms of showing the social value that that piece of content has. And also it's essentially turning your followers, your audience, into ambassadors who are bringing followers and viewers to you. So I usually notice that content that gets a lot of shares usually converts to a lot of new followers and a lot of new impressions. And so shares are like at the top of my list most of the time.
All right, I'm on with that one then. Spot on. Really quick question before I let you go. Does it matter what time of day people post anymore, or are we not caring about that?
I think it does matter to some capacity, but it's always changing so much that it's better to find like a consistent time and just sticking to that to kind of like make the algorithm work for you instead of the other way around.
I like that. And instead of trying to guess, right? As always, it's such a pleasure chatting with you. Gabrielle Layne-Avery, we love having you on the show. Creative director and content strategist for Stretch Communications. Check her out. And as always, we love having you watching America Trends. We will be here every night of the week at 10 p.m. We'll see you again tomorrow night.